Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for your patience. It's wonderful to have you here this afternoon. My name is Rachel Gentili, and I'm the Program Outreach Specialist at OVS. Today, we are happy to welcome you to Writing a Strong Grant Proposal. This is part 3 of our Financial Fiscal Resilience webinar series with the aim of helping you and your program maintain and build strong, resilient financial organizations moving forward. Next slide, please. Today, we have the following accommodation service that has been put into place for this event. We have CART live captioning. So live captioning is live transcription of everything that we're saying. It is viewable in the multimedia viewer, which should be showing on your screen right now in the bottom right corner. In this multimedia viewer, you have the ability to change the size and the style of font to suit your needs. If for some reason you are unable to see the multimedia viewer, please go to the top of your screen where it says View, select Panels, scroll down to Manage Panels, and there you should see the ability to add the multimedia viewer panel. Blake is also going to share in the chat a link to this, to a site that will bring you to the live CART transcription. So if for some reason you're unable to see it through WebEx, you can open an additional screen in your browser and copy and paste the link that Blake just sent and see all live captioning. I'm just going to give about 5 seconds before I start talking about the next one. That's okay, Jenny, you're fine, just so people can access that. All right, I think we can move on to the next slide. If for some reason you cannot hear this and you are trying to access audio, just be aware that you do need to dial into the meeting. So the phone number and access code are shown on the screen. The phone number is 1-518-549-0500. The access code is 171-203-9469. Throughout the meeting, we'll be using the chat feature to send some links. We might have some questions. There'll be some polling and things of that nature. So you'll want to make sure that you put the chat feature on. So in order to access the chat feature, if you're unable to see it, you can move your cursor over the screen and you should see a row of circles. The fourth one in looks like a little chat bubble. If it is grayed out, that means that your chat feature is not on. Please click it, it will turn blue, and then you should see the chat feature pop up. You'll see in the chat feature, the picture on the right that I'm showing on my slide shows a two area. So you should have 2 options for 2, either all panelists. That's for if you have a question, if you're having an issue and you only want the people running the webinar to see it, you can select all panelists. There will be a few times throughout the meeting where we may ask for you to share your thoughts with the broader group, in which case you should be able to click the drop down, and I believe it says click everyone, all panelists, all attendees, something of that nature that's not just panelists, and you'll be able to chat, and anything you chat at that point will be viewable to all attendees on the webinar. Next slide. Speaking of the chat, slides for this webinar, we've put them on a link, and Blake will be sharing that in the chat right now. So if you were looking to have a handout, please check in there. And now I'm going to hand it over to Blake to give a little bit of a recap of where we've been, what we're doing, and where we're going before we formally kick off the event. Thanks for joining us.
All right. And the slide link should be in your chat box right now too. So thank you, Rachel, for your introduction and getting us all grounded and ready for today's presentation. So I am Blake Cush. I'm the Director of Training and Outreach at OVS. And this past April, we actually hosted a webinar on financial sustainability for victim assistance programs. And in that webinar, we reviewed the current landscape of VOCA funding and its very uncertain future. With that, we understand that this financial environment comes with a lot of challenges and questions, and that's sort of what led to the development and implementation of this actual webinar series, the Building Your Program's Fiscal Resilience webinar series. And as Rachel mentioned, this is the 3rd one in that series. So each actual webinar is recorded, and links are made available on the OVS VAP Training Center webpage, as well as our OVS YouTube channel. As soon as you exit today's webinar, you'll be directed to an evaluation survey of the presentation. It's a safe pop-up that will automatically redirect you in your web browser please take a couple minutes, give us your feedback. We use those evaluations to modify and enhance each subsequent training, and the feedback is extremely valuable to us. So please take a couple minutes out of your day after today's training to do that for us. You'll also have an opportunity at that point too to notify us if you're interested in receiving more training and follow-up on either this topic or a variety of other trainings topics as well. So finally, today's webinar is led by Jennifer Amstutz of JA Strategies and Alan Krieger of Krieger Solutions. These are our partners now for a couple years, and both Jenny and Alan have more than 40 years of combined experience in consulting and training, working with nonprofits and agencies around the state of New York. Both also have served as executive directors of nonprofit organizations and each have master's degrees in management. That said, I'd like to formally welcome Jenny and Alan.
Thank you so much, Blake. We are happy to be here with everybody again today and to do this webinar for you, writing a strong grant proposal. Alan and I have both written a lot of successful proposals throughout our careers. And we're going to be sharing with you a range of tips and strategies that we found helpful. This is a very similar webinar to one that we did a couple of years ago. So if you were on that webinar, we're glad that you're back, and it will be a bit of a refresher for you. By the end of this webinar, you'll be able to be better at critically reading and understanding grant announcements and requests for proposals. We'll also take you through framing your proposal to build funder confidence in your program and your agency. We're going to present a logic model, which is a strategic way to think about your program. We'll talk about ways to carefully respond to funder priorities and at the same time showcase your organization's strengths and your organization's uniqueness. And last, but in no way least, we'll discuss developing the grant budget, which is an important, but can be a tedious part of doing a harder part for some people of doing the grant proposal. So we hope this addresses what you were hoping to learn today. If there is anything else that you were hoping that we'd cover, but that's not on this list, please use the chat box to let us know. And as Rachel pointed out, you can use the all panelists if you just want to let us know individually about that. All panelists comes to us, all participants goes to the full group. We'll try, if you have anything that you want to put in that chat box, we'll try and address it at the end of when we answer questions. And also let us know if you have any specific issues or challenges right now in grant writing, and we'll try and address those as well. So right now what we're going to do is we're going to do our first poll. And we'd like everybody who can to complete this. It will give us a sense of how much experience the group has with grant writing. You're going to have 5 choices, so choose the one that's the best fit. You're just going to have 30 seconds to make your choice once we open the poll, so I want to give you a quick second to look through them now. The poll will pop up on the right side of your screen. Select the option that best describes your experience with grant writing, and then be sure to hit submit. Rachel is going to launch the poll right now. Got 5 seconds left, so if you haven't submitted your answer, do it now. And now it takes about 20 seconds once the poll is complete to publish. Let WebEx do its work.
20 seconds feels very long when you're waiting.
It does, I know. Okay, well, we had so we have a large number of us who are either brand new to grant writing, so almost a third of the group is brand new to grant writing, and about another 34 of you, another 20%, let's say, who don't write grants right now, so but provide input and feedback. So I think that's great. This will give you a really good perspective on how you can, give that feedback to people, make those grants stronger. There are a few of you in the middle who write grants periodically, so this may be a way for you to, a little bit of a refresher ways for you to think of grants in a different way. And only a very few of you whose primary job is either as grant writer or as the only person in the agency or the primary person in the agency writing grants. So for those of you who write a lot of grants, hopefully this will just give you some new ideas or reinforce what you already know. So I appreciate it. Everybody's answering. Okay, so now we are going to move on, and we're going to start with thinking about the actual grant announcements and the RFPs, because that's really the first step in writing a successful proposal, because we really want to fully understand exactly what a funder is looking for. When you are first starting your grant, you should read through the announcement or the RFP several times and make sure you're reading all of the fine print. Many funders have really specific requirements as to what kind of proposals they'll entertain and what kind of projects they're going to support. And you don't want to spend hours creating a proposal and then find out that it doesn't meet the funder's criteria. Some funders restrict their funding or give really high priority to specific geographic areas or to target groups that the program can serve. They can focus, those target groups might focus on age, may focus on gender or ethnicity, socioeconomic status, educational or employment levels. So, you know, they can vary. So you want to really vary. So you may want to look at those pretty clearly. Some funders will limit their funds to specific types of programs, such as allowing or disallowing residential programs and related expenses for things like food and housing. Some want to respond to a specific problem or need that may be narrower than the program you have in mind. So notice whether the focus is on capital funding or funding for services. That's another difference. Some funders primarily fund one or the other. Capital funding refers to purchasing or renovating buildings, buying expensive equipment, or other physical property related expenses. Many funders who support service delivery can severely restrict the amount spent on non-service items, such as equipment, food, transportation assistance, or other program materials. So read the announcements carefully to look for these and other requirements or limitations, including any requirements for matching funds. Read the matching fund portion especially carefully because matching requirements can often be pretty confusing. Once you've read through the RFP or the grant announcement, spend some time trying to read between the lines of the announcement itself. So what is the funder most interested in achieving? See if you can figure out what their motivation is for giving out the funding. Research the funder to see their mission and philosophy and what they typically fund. Often you can locate information about their past grants that will give you a lot of information in that area. And then once you have all that information and you've thought about it a little bit, take a hard look at your agency and your program. How well do you line up with your funder's priorities? Once you do think that you're a good fit, then it's finally time to write the proposal. The definition of a well-written proposal is a clearly stated, well-coordinated plan of activities designed to provide measurable solutions or outcomes to a specific problem in order to accomplish social and/or economic benefits for a target population. Simply put, it's an outline of your program stating the benefit it will provide and then requesting money to support it. It's you making your case for why someone should fund the program or project. In a broader sense, proposals are vehicles to introduce people to who you are and how what you do addresses the goals of any given funder. So first and foremost, proposals should be prepared assuming that the reader doesn't know anything about your organization or anything about the program that you're requesting money for. The proposal should include all the information that a person needs to understand who you are and enough details about the activities that make up your program. You don't want somebody interrupting his or her reading to Google the meaning of an acronym or a program delivery method. Finally, the proposal should be prepared with specific funder in mind. It should reflect that funder's own priorities and goals. You've spent a lot of time looking into those, so you want to make sure that you're reflecting those back to the funder. You don't want the reader to have to figure out how your program connects to their own giving priorities. You want to make that leap in connection for them. Let's take a look at the grant application process. If you look at this flow chart, you can see that you want to begin with the logic model for your program. Alan's going to discuss that in a little while. But basically, it's something that will help you clarify your program outcomes and objectives and will identify the actual funding needs for the program. You'll then use that information to find prospective grants that will fund your specific type of program within the dollar range that you're looking for. Based on your own schedule and the earliest application deadline for the funders you have identified, you'll develop your grant writing timeline. Once the timeline's in place, you can begin developing the actual grant proposal and you customizing it to that specific funder's priorities. If you're looking for funding from a variety of different sources or foundations for the same program, it's easiest to first develop a general proposal for the program, one that includes all the relevant information and all the different components. And we're going to go over in a little while what those components are. Then, once you have that in place, you'll individually tailor the proposals to meet the guidelines and needs of each different funder. So from that one general grant proposal, you might develop 6 or 10 slightly different proposals. Alan's now going to take us through some ways to design a winning proposal.
Thanks, Jenny. As funders review your proposal, it's crucial that it instills confidence in them that you're the right agency to pull this off. Think about your needs for funding and which parts most line up with a specific funder. That customization is key to building their confidence in you. You may have to approach a group of funders to get funds for all the aspects of your program. As you write each version of the proposal, be sure to address each funder's requirements and priorities. Make your best case, but don't overpromise. Sometimes you can't check every box and respond to every priority of a funder. Stick with what you know you can do well. If you're asking a funder to fund part of a program, be clear about what you'll do if you don't receive all the funds you need. How will you adjust your design to accommodate that? Funders want to be reassured that you've thought all this through. Be sure to include descriptions of past successes. What have you done that is similar? What have you done that demonstrates your capacity for successfully implementing the program? What expertise does your staff bring to the proposed program? Funders also like to see that their funding dollar is stretched by you bringing in additional resources. One important source to cite is in-kind resources. These are donations or contributions of space, equipment, materials, and professional or volunteer services. Some of these can be provided by your agency, such as use of existing equipment or facilities that you will not be charging to this program. Some can be provided by the community, such as a grocery store donating refreshments for an event, another organization providing meeting space at no charge, or staff from other agencies providing services paid for by the other agencies. Also add in the time of your volunteers, with a cost estimated at a reasonable hourly rate plus benefits that a paid staff person would require. And finally, funders want to be sure that the program can be sustained after their initial funding. So take some time to think through and explain how once the startup expenses are over, costs will go down and you can secure these funds from other sources. In a moment, we're going to post one more quick poll to get a sense of your agency's experience with grant funding. We'd like to know approximately how many grants your agency secures each year. Take a best guess or work on a rough average. Again, we're going to just give you 30 seconds. So, is it more than 10, 6 to 10, 3 to 5, 1 to 2, or none currently, or you don't really know? Okay, so we're opening the poll now. It should pop up on your screen. Make your best guess. Again, we're just going to have 30 seconds. Okay, 10 seconds. If you haven't gotten to it, do it real quick and hit submit. Okay, time's up. So we're waiting for our computer here to calculate everything and get it posted up for our results. While we're waiting, in a minute, I'm going to ask you, especially if your agency has a lot of different grants, to chat in some examples of the kind of grants you get funding from, so others can see kind of the range of funding options available. So if you want to go ahead while we're waiting, oh, here come the results. So that's going to be our next step. Okay, so as we look at this, we have the largest number is, besides not answering, is more than 10. So a lot of the agencies you represent are funded by an extensive mix of grants. only 8% of you have only 1 to 2, and then a good number in between. So those of you with the 6 to 10 or more than 10, if you could give some examples of some of the answers. And for those of you that don't know, that would be a good question to ask your executive director or your manager is, how reliant are we on grant funding? And how many do we need? So next slide. Okay, so if you could in the chat box, if you have some examples of kinds of grants that you get funding from. And chat into either all panelists if you just wanted to go to us, or all participants. And you don't have to put the name of the funder, but you get it from, like, local foundations, community foundations, from some kind of a domestic violence foundation that focuses on that. Okay, I'm not seeing any, so, oh, here we go. Foundations, community foundations, yeah, DOJ, from the county, right? Does anybody get county funding? Other state agencies? Just from OVS?
I have some as well. So we have from other state agencies, local foundations, the city, private funding, a lot of county, state, federal, foundation grants, criminal justice, some other, again, state agencies, a lot of private foundation grants, city council, local foundations. And that's what's popping through for me.
Okay, yeah, I'm not sure why I'm not seeing any of those, but that's good. We got Ryan White, city council discretionary funding. I think that's Department of Veteran, maybe DOVE, state. Okay, yeah, we're having a little confusion around chatting. Someone said chat with everyone is disabled, but choosing panelists or attendees.
Yeah, attendees is the correct one, and that will share with all the attendees on there. Your view is a little different from ours, so apologies for the confusion in language. You have two options. Panelists goes to the people hosting the event. Attendees goes to all of the people in the room, so your fellow colleagues and whatnot.
But I can't see them, attendees. So you're gonna have to do all the reading, Rachel.
I did. We're all set.
Okay.
Thank
All
you,
right.
everybody.
Okay, on to our next. So getting back to writing the proposal, developing your logic model is the first step. So we're going to start by reviewing that. Those of you on the webinar today who are part of our evaluation training or evaluation webinar in past years have already heard us talk about developing logic models. For everybody else, we're going to give a quick overview of what a logic model is and how it connects to the grant writing process. So a logic model is a short visual depiction of your program, showing what your program will do, your activities and outputs, and what it's designed to accomplish, the outcomes. A logic model is made up of three main areas: inputs, outputs, and outcomes. And they sound the same, but there's a difference between outputs and outcomes. The inputs in a logic model are the resources you need, such as staff, money, materials, to put your program into effect. The outputs in a logic model are the actual activities that the organization undertakes in order to achieve its purpose, your program services, and the products of those activities. When we talk about products, we're talking about the things you generally report to OVS and other funders, the number of people served by the services you offer or the hours of service received. The outputs measure the amount of activities delivered. The last piece of a logic model is outcomes, and that shows the desired impact and benefit that will result from program inputs and activities. A logic model is usually depicted in either a table or flowchart format, with arrows depicting the causal relationships. The arrows represent the if-then nature of your program design. For example, what we see here, if we invest these dollars in the program, then we will be able to provide these services. If we provide these services, we'll be able to achieve these specific results. To some degree, our grant proposal is going to be a long narrative of our logic model, but generally we present it in reverse. In order to meet the needs we identified, we have set goals and specific outcomes that will measure how we achieve the desired results to meet these needs. In order to meet these outcomes, we will provide the following services and activities, which are the outputs of our efforts. And finally, to be able to support these services that will provide the desired results, we need to raise, and we're asking you to invest a certain amount of money, which usually comes in our budget at the end. By creating the logic model before we start, we will have a short outline of what our proposal needs to include, and we'll have determined the amount of money we need to implement the program. Once our logic model is in place, our next step is to draft our narrative, which will outline our design and connect to funder priorities. The first step is to create our timeline and action plan. This begins by outlining the entire proposal, including all the required sections and documents, such as the budget, any letters of support, and then making a list of everyone who will be involved as writers, designers, people with expertise to contribute, and those who need to sign off on it. Also think about, are there supervisors that need to approve these programs? Will fiscal people need to provide information to develop the budget? Do you have program staff that need to provide data or other examples? With all these players in mind, you want to work backwards from the day of submission, setting deadlines for each part of the process and indicating who will be in charge of each step. Be sure to build in a cushion for internal reviews and approvals, delays in getting information, and contributions from external partners. Once your action plan is set, be sure to give a copy to everyone who will be involved in the process, and make sure they're clear about and they're okay with their areas of responsibility and timeframes. Make sure they understand how their piece of the proposal and their deadline impacts everyone else in the process. Remember from our grant writing process flowchart, our final step was to submit our grant on time or even early. The proposal development timeline and action plan is a vital component of making sure we can do that. And creating a timeline is a step that most people leave out when they're getting ready to start a proposal. Here are a few more hints. More and more funders are using online submissions. In that case, be sure to include an early action step, the review of the online process and online forms. You don't want to be under the gun to submit a proposal when you don't understand how the website works or have trouble setting up an account. And I speak from personal experience. Some funders, especially foundations, require a letter of inquiry or other pre-qualification step, so also move this to the top. Finally, some funders will let you know how they're scoring your proposals, maybe more points for your program design and fewer for your budget. Allow the most time for those sections of the proposal that are worth the most points. You don't want to rush those. Jenny is now going to explain all the pieces that go into a proposal and give you some tips for completing each one.
Thank you, Alan. So Alan's taken you through all the ways to do the research and to lay out the plan. So now it's really time to write the proposal. So we're going to review the common components of a grant proposal, and although every grant proposal tends to be different. So I want us to think back to this initial definition that we gave you at the beginning. In general, it gives you a blueprint for what needs to be in the proposal itself, if not necessarily in the correct order. You'll need to explain the problem, define your target population that you will reach, define your outcomes for your project, and how those outcomes will benefit your target population. And you'll need a plan of activities to achieve the outcomes. To achieve this, here's a list of the various pieces that go into a grant proposal. A proposal needs to have components that define each of the elements in our definition. So in addition to the things we talked about, stating the specific problem, target population, and measurable outcomes, there are a few more standard components that you'll find. In some cases, a proposal can be as simple as a one-page letter, but more often it's a complex document with an executive summary, with background about your organization, a statement of need or a problem statement, the goals or outcomes of the program design, an evaluation, a sustainability plan that will talk about the future funding program for the program, a budget, and possibly even a budget narrative. It also will include a key list of personnel involved in the project, a conclusion, and then maybe even appendices or attachments that provide additional detail. Not every grant proposal will include each of these things, but that's why it's important to really read the guidelines carefully to make sure you know what it does require. If you're writing a general grant proposal that you can adapt to many different funders, then you should definitely write each of these sections so that you have it ready to tailor and adapt. If you're preparing a very specific grant for one specific funder and it's a one-off thing, then you only need to write the sections that are included in the guidelines. I want to spend a few minutes now talking about each of these components. A proposal often starts with an executive summary. And while it comes first in the submitted grant, you should write it after you've written the entire proposal. Depending on the length of the grant proposal itself, the executive summary may only be a paragraph or it may be an entire page. In general, it's a short summary of the organization, the problem statement, the goals and outcomes to be achieved, and a very brief description of the activities. It should also contain the actual dollar amount of the funding request that you're making to the particular foundation or funder, so they don't have to dig for that. Next is the organizational background. Sometimes it comes later in the proposal, but for simplicity, I'm going to talk about it here. This is where agencies demonstrate qualifications to provide the program, their history in the community, their mission, and the types of activities or services that they are already providing in the community, and the things that they're already providing with that target population. Agencies need to demonstrate their expertise and accomplishments with similar projects and their capability to take on the proposed project. You can also include any third-party support from elected officials or other community agencies for the work that you do in this section. The newer your agency or program, the more important it is to get these types of testimonials. Funders are concerned about how skilled, solid, and reliable you'll be. So it's good to provide some of that information, but you also don't want to get bogged down in this section. You want to be able to spend the bulk of your time on the sections related to the need for your program, the program goals and outcomes, and the program design. So next is the problem statement. This is where you're making the case for why your program or your project is necessary. So one of this is a section that really defines what the problem is that you're seeking to address with your project or with your program. It should include a description of your target population, for example, women between the ages of 18 and 24 in Broome County. If you or other agencies are providing similar services in the geographic area you serve, you want to define where there's a gap that you're hoping to fill. Data from other sources that backs up your stated need makes for a stronger problem statement. So if you have any hard outside data, maybe census data or a locally funded needs assessment, this is a really great place to include it. After the problem section, the next section of the grant is the goals or outcomes section. This is where you talk about how you're going to address the problem itself and where you describe the impact the program will have on your target population. It's important to clearly link your program outcomes back to the problem statement and be sure they're written in clear and simple language. You want to leave out any jargon or acronyms. Also, try and write the outcomes in SMART format. For those of you who haven't heard us talk about SMART before, SMART represents specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. It's what makes your outcome specific and doable. We don't have time right now to go into the detail about outcome statements and designing SMART outcome statements, but they are critical to your proposal. And if you'd like assistance developing outcome statements, let us know and we can work with you on that. Once you've stated your goals and outcomes, then it's time to move on to your program design. This is a section where writers often leave out important details because they know their own programs so well. I've read a lot of proposals where I come away knowing the problem the program addresses and what the benefit of the program will be, but I'm still not exactly sure what the program is actually going to do to address it. That's been left out. These proposals didn't specify what activities or services that clients would receive, or when they did list them, they didn't always connect them back to the goals or the problem statement. So this is a section where you really need to remember that you may be talking to somebody who's totally unfamiliar with your program and your program delivery model. It's in this section that you should refer back to your logic model, what the activities and services that you'll actually provide through the project that will help you meet your outcomes. If there is existing evidence or data that shows the correlation between these activities and your desired outcomes, introduce that data here as well. This section should also identify the specifics of the service delivery model, when, where, and how the activities will be provided. And you want to include who the key staff are that will provide the activities. When someone is done reading this section, they should have a very clear picture of how the program will operate and how it will help the target population, even if they've never heard of your program before. For that reason, it's important to avoid any industry jargon and acronyms. I know I said it before, but I think sometimes we forget that they're not always common to everyone. Most grant applications require an evaluation plan, so you should create one that will demonstrate how you'll measure your success and how you'll know you are meeting your goals. It's important to remember to be realistic. Don't propose an evaluation that you do not have the staff or the technical capacity to implement. I had a mentor who used to say, don't promise the Mercedes if you can only afford the Kia. So be really realistic about what it is that you're able to provide and make sure that that evaluation plan is represented and not something bigger. If you do want assistance with creating an evaluation plan for your program, we can assist you with that as well. Often when you're applying for state or federal funds, you'll be able to reapply every few years to continue those funds, so you don't really have to think about the future. But on the other hand, you do have to think about the future. I shouldn't say it that way. You should think about the future, but it's not quite as questionable. On the other hand, most foundation grant funds are temporary and are one-time funding. Most foundations still like to fund new or pilot programs instead of funding the same program year after year. So they fund those programs, but they do want the programs to continue and grow after they've piloted them, provided the funding for the pilot. So for that reason, some funders will ask for a sustainability plan. Your sustainability plan is the way you show funders how you'll be able to continue the program after the end of the grant. It has to be convincing and it has to be realistic. Maybe you can make up the funding from client fees or reimbursement insurance, or you'll raise the funds from individual donors or business sponsors. You can also include other grants in your sustainability plan, but only if you believe your ability to secure them is pretty certain. All through the proposal writing process, it's important to remember to focus on promoting your agency's strengths and the unique expertise you bring to this project. So some of the things that you can do to highlight your agency are to show how the project or program ties in with the goals of your strategic plan. That way the funder will see that this is a priority and a core program for your agency. Let the funder know about your previous success. And if this is a new program and you don't have previous success with this specific program itself, highlight successes in programs that are very similar. And while success statistics can be impressive, you want to use them sparingly. If you provide too much detail, it becomes overwhelming and it takes away the focus from the program itself and the outcomes. Quotes and stories can bring your program alive to the reader, but do the same thing with here as we just talked about with statistics. Less is more. A short quote or a brief story is more powerful than a long, complex story. Finally, funders like to fund interesting and innovative programs that are unique, as long as they see a high likelihood of success. So be sure to highlight the unique and innovative aspects of your program. Include any explanation of why you're doing this to continue to build the funder's confidence in your design. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Alan, who's going to take us through the budget process.
Okay, obviously a budget is a key part of any grant proposal, and it's often one that is most confusing to people. So hang on to your seats, but we're going to get through this. And again, we have another webinar coming up to give you more information on that later. Most funders ask for a total program budget, and then they ask you to break it down by what costs you're asking for from that funder and what costs will come from other sources. So you first need to create your total budget for the program. In other words, every cost that can be attributed to running the program. Your direct costs are those that are specific to your program, such as how many staff you'll need and what you will pay them. It also includes the cost for supplies and materials, training for staff, and travel if we're ever back in person. Your indirect costs are those costs related to running the agency, but not specific to your program alone. All programs need to provide some share of that, and these are generally done as a percentage. It can include a percent of the administrator or supervisor's salary. It could include part of the overhead or building costs like rent, utilities, or equipment. Be sure to create a line item for each type of resource needed for the project. Program budgeting and allocating overhead and fixed costs is a complex subject. We have a webinar coming up on January 5th that will address financial management for non-financial managers, and it'll include some components on budgeting and help you have a better understanding of the overall accounting process, which I think would be helpful in writing grants. In addition to the sustainability plan that Jenny mentioned, many funders require that you provide a match for a percentage of the funding request. That's part of the way they see that you've got some skin in the game and likely to keep the program going when they're done. The matching requirements are resources that you have to provide that are needed to implement the program and extend the grant funds. If you're requesting $100,000 and the funder requires a 25% match, then you need to have $25,000 in hand and be able to demonstrate that in your proposal. So remember to be realistic about the match you can generate. Make sure you understand any limitations on the match. Does the match need to be actual cash, or could it be in-kind services? These two things are sometimes referred to as a hard match and a soft match. Also be sure to investigate if there are limits on where the matching funds can originate. Some federal matching requirements prohibit the use of other federal funds for the match. Finally, you may make sure you understand how the match will be calculated. The requirement is a 25% match. Does that mean 25% of the entire program cost or 25% of the grant request that you're making? Once you have your overall budget set, divide it into 3 categories or columns in your budget spreadsheet. The first is those costs that will be covered by the grant request. The second is other cash resources that will supplement the project. This might be where you include your required match. The third category is where you can show any in-kind resources that will use for the program. Maybe your rent is donated by the landlord, or someone offers training to your staff for free. These are still program expenses and should be reflected in the budget. This next slide shows an example of the budget as we just described it. But sometimes the funder will include their own budget form for inclusion, and that could look quite different. Be sure you always use the format requested by the funder. The format we just reviewed will give you the information you need to understand the full costs of your program, and then help you transfer that information into the format that the funder requires. A few hints for your budget. Make sure you run the budget by the people in your finance office. They will help make sure that it's realistic and you haven't left anything out, like fringe benefits or liability insurance. Expenses should be reasonable. You shouldn't artificially inflate them beyond what the program will need to run efficiently, but you also shouldn't lowball your numbers so you cannot fully implement the program the way you describe it in the program design. Make sure to follow the directions exactly for each individual funder. This is an important time to double check what a funder will and will not pay for, whether there are limits on training or whether they will only pay for staff time but not materials. Also make sure you keep your language and numbers consistent with your budget narrative, as well as your program description. And when you're done, check your spreadsheet formulas. Again, I speak from experience. You don't want to underestimate the cost of your program because the spreadsheet wasn't adding up correctly. Many grants also ask for a budget narrative. This is a brief explanation of the costs in your budget and how they relate to the program. It's here that you include how you calculated your cost if that isn't shown in the actual budget. Sometimes this is called a budget justification because the narrative gives you a chance to justify why you've included a specific expense. If you have any unusual expenditures in your budget, be sure you explain them in the narrative. Here's a quick example of a budget narrative for a line item that calls for program counselors. You can see this explains that the amount, $86,000, is based on 2 counselors, each earning $43,000. It then goes on to show how these counselors fit into the organizational structure and what their primary responsibilities will be related to the program. If $43,000 was extremely low or extremely high for program counselor salaries in your area, you'd want to explain it here. In this case, the narrative indicates that the counselors will have a master's degree, justifying perhaps a higher salary. There's a lot that goes into a program budget, and taking it step by step with the help of your finance office will help you get through it. This wraps up our core presentation on what goes into a proposal. We have some final tips and reminders to share, and then we'll be happy to take your questions. Go ahead and start typing your questions in the chat box. Be sure to either send them to all presenters, so we see them only, or send them to all attendees so everybody can see the questions you have. Either way is fine. So as we said earlier, it's important to tailor your proposal to fit each of the specific funders to whom you will be applying. Read and reread the proposal instructions or guidelines and follow them to the letter. This includes the length of the proposal, what needs to be included, and the guidelines for the types of programs they fund. Write the grant in exactly the format the funder requests. If you're submitting 5 requests from 5 different funders, and 4 of them ask for the organizational background first, and the 5th puts it at the end, move it to the end for that 5th funder. Don't make them search through your proposal to find what they're looking for. Also, use the same language the funder uses. If the funder uses the word victim as the beneficiaries of their funding, and your agency prefers to use the word survivor, switch the proposal to read victim in this request. If there's a strong reason why you feel you cannot change this language, clearly explain that in your proposal, but do it in a non-judgmental way. Match the size of your request to the funder guidelines. If they say typical grants are between $1,000 and $5,000, don't ask them for $20,000. And likewise, if they typically fund $40,000 and $50,000 projects, they're unlikely to fund a $1,000 project. Finally, if you still have questions after reading through the guidelines more than once, contact the grant officer with questions. But please only do this if you're sure that the answers are not in the guidelines already. If you followed everything we've just discussed, you've only just finished your draft. Now it's time for editing. There are a number of things you want to look for. Make sure you always stay away from negativity in your proposal. Focus on the positive. Try and eliminate the fluff. That is all unnecessary information that may cloud the proposal. Also try and eliminate redundancy. Don't say the same thing over and over again. Try not to repeat yourself. That's just a good example of redundancy right there. Make your proposal easy to read. Break up all the words with subheadings and bullets, short paragraphs, and sentences. Standardize your fonts. We all do a lot of cutting and pasting when we write grants, and that can result in a mishmash of fonts. Keep it to one. Take out your acronyms. Unless the funder uses the acronym in the RFP or guidelines, spell these out, at least the first time. Never assume that people know what you're talking about. To that end, it's a good idea to have someone not involved in the grant writing process, or even someone independent from the program itself, read the program for clarity. Many funders, especially those requiring long proposals, include a proposal checklist. Don't forget to check that you've included everything they've asked for. Make sure every item is in the proposal. Are all required forms completed? Are all required boxes checked? Make sure every required field and line are filled out and that you've included signatures in all the places where required. And look for where they require notarized signatures and make sure you have that in as well. It's sometimes the minute details that get us. And last, but certainly not least, be sure to proofread carefully and proofread again. Many proposals are submitted online these days, and that adds a few more concerns. It shouldn't impact how you write the proposal at all. With online submissions, you should still write, edit, and proofread the entire proposal in a regular document, such as Word. When it's ready to go, cut and paste it into the online template. Then print that out and proof it again. These online programs usually wreak havoc on formatting, and you want to make sure that in the process of cutting and pasting, you didn't leave anything out. And then make sure to allow time for technological disasters. Try to submit early, at least a couple of days before it is actually due. There are too many horror stories out there about systems crashing, both your own as the grant writer or the funder server itself, right when the application is due. Finally, look for an email receipt or print your confirmation so you make sure that the application was received. If you apply with plenty of time to spare, you can then fix any problems if it doesn't go through the first time. For those proposals that are still delivered the old-fashioned way in hard copy, if the proposal is long, make sure you include page numbers and a header or footer with your program or agency name on it just in case the pages get separated. Print out the proposal and check for any inconvenient page breaks. You don't want a title at the bottom of one page and the paragraph at the top of the next. Check your deadline. If the proposal is due on the 30th, do they mean it needs to be postmarked by the 30th or received by then? Also double check you're sending the proposal to the right address. Sounds like a silly reminder, but it could be a vital one. And then the last two reminders are the same as for online submissions. Prepare for mail or traffic disasters and submit well before the deadline. And get a receipt or track the submission package so you know that the proposal has been received on time. So this now completes our presentation, and Jenny will take it from here to wrap us up.
All right. So, wow, we've provided you with a lot of information. So right now, I want you to feel free to chat in any questions that you have, and we'll stay on to answer them. If you can chat in your questions to all panelists, that would be great. I think the all attendees goes to the attendees. I think the host, Rachel, can see them, but Alan and I can't see them. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
but
if you,
just so you know, a few questions have come through to all attendees. I see them. I'm doing some stuff on the back end. So for those few people that did that, don't worry, you're not getting missed. We'll look to answer you either directly or I'll speak it out to the group.
We're going to have time at the end for questions, and so Rachel can read those to us. So that's great. But in general, the key for everything that we said today is to begin early. Make sure you have a plan that allows enough time for each component of the proposal to be written. Be sure to give the funders what they want, including the format and the focus. And a well-written proposal for a compelling program that follows the funder guidelines to a T is the one that's really most likely to be successful. And that's what we're going for here, successful proposals. So we have just about 6 minutes left. We wanted to give you an opportunity to turn it back to us, to turn it back in so you can tell us a few things. First, if you want to let us know what you've heard today that you think you are going to be bringing back to your programs or agencies, that would be great. So, just take a few seconds. We're only going to take a minute or two for this because we do want to leave time for questions. You can chat those in.
Okay. I'm seeing a few questions come through, so bear with me for just a moment.
And we'll do the questions in a sec, Rachel.
Okay. Sorry about that.
That's okay. We're gonna leave just so in time. We're just asking people if they have anything that they want, the things that they're going to bring back to their agency. They can type those in. Also, you all there were some people who had some good grant writing experience on the call. If you have some ideas that we didn't share that you want to put in the chat, that would be great to put in for all attendees so they can see those. One of the comments that just came in from the panel says, coming from a finance point of view, this is great to give my program grant writers. So sometimes, I think that's a really good point. The finance office, they know and needs certain things. The grant writers need something else. So this is a good way to kind of bridge that gap, make sure everybody's looking for the same information. And one of the other comments that came to us was really thinking about working backwards from a deadline. I find that very helpful, both in grant writing and planning other types of events is, we'll do your timeline backwards instead of forwards. And that way you don't get caught at the end. So great. Continue to put those comments in. Right now, we are going to kind of continue on. So we do have time to answer your questions. Again, continue to write the questions in. If you type them in for all attendees, that's great. Or they'll go to Rachel, she'll read them to us, or you can do them to all panelists. While we do this, we are going to give you our email addresses at the end. There was somebody who asked about getting in touch with us. You will have our email addresses at the end. They're also in the slides. We want to take a few minutes before we end to remind everyone of the Training and Technical Assistance Request Program that's sponsored by OVS. So through this program, we're able to provide training and coaching and consulting to OVS funded programs at no cost to those programs. So some of the things that we talked about today, both maybe helping with the evaluation plan, helping you think about your logic models, that's something that we can do through the Training and Technical Assistance Request Program. So you can find out more information at the website listed here, but we wanted to give you a few sample projects that will relate directly to grant writing. So as I said, we can help you with an evaluation plan, we can help you refine your outcome measures and your logic models and facilitate maybe a meeting with your staff to do that to help you as a group think through your program design and your outcome measures. We can also help coach any new grant writers that you have to help them develop a strong proposal template. The one thing we can't do for you as part of the TTAR program is actually write your grants for you. So I'll just put that out there. We'd love to, but we can't. But we're happy to help you think through both your format, maybe think through your timeline, and help you create the template for those components without actually doing it.
Get it while you can. It's in its last year of funding. So you guys, please take advantage of this program while it's there for you. And I can't think of a better way to use it than to get some grant writing help.
Absolutely.
So yes,
I know it's been mentioned, but this is open to OVS funded agencies, and once you're approved, it's free. It is free to use. So it is. Please use it. Please, 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 please use it. I'm going to type in the chat that address again, just so that everybody has it. So bear with me for just a moment.
All right. And so, Blake, do you want to finish this up, and then we will answer the questions that have come in?
Yes, that's awesome. So thank you guys again for giving us your time and your presentation. As always, you guys are amazing. Everybody who did join us today, don't forget to do your evaluation survey as soon as you exit from the webinar. We're going to stick around and do some questions, but if you do jump off, don't forget to join us for next month's webinar, the last in this series on managing funds responsibly, fiscal management for program managers. The link to that is available on our OVS training webpage. It's just ovs.ny.gov/training. That's on January 5th. All right, so let's jump into some questions.
All righty. I'll go through the list that I can see.
Hold on, what were you going to say, Alan?
Well, we got one question that I can see.
Okay.
It sounds like it's written more for OVS than us. So just to be clear, Jenny and I are outside contractors. We have nothing to do with OVS funding decisions. But the question is, what are some examples where you were between two applications and decided for one and not the other? What was the reason you didn't go with the one? I can just share one story. I submitted a proposal to an agency that had been working with another consultant, and they really wanted to keep working with that consultant. They chose me. What they said is, you answered every question we asked exactly specifically. The other consultant was a little bit lazy and just chose what they wanted to answer. And so we have to go with you. You did the better job. So it does work writing good proposals. But Rachel, you want to read some?
Yeah, absolutely. So we did get a few questions just about kind of specifically OVS grants and a new RFP, a contract extension and whatnot. I just want to say for all of those, any contract extensions or new RFAs are decided at a later date. We will send out notifications of that via broadcast email. So it is a good idea to be a part of the OVS listserv and sign up for that. You can find that on our website, but we don't have any information about that right now.
A lot of that's contingent on VOCA funding, so stay tuned with how things go with that too. So.
A question specifically, this I think Jenny and Alan may be able to address, is what would a first-time or new business developer present to substitute for the organizational background or experience? Is there a recommendation there for that?
So I think you really want to focus on the strength of your model. So what kind of backing do you have for the specific model that you've chosen? So what research do you have that shows that it's successful? Why have you chosen that specific approach? What outcomes are you hoping to achieve? And what data do you have that shows that often your model will help you achieve that outcome? And the second is then the portion where you are focusing on who your key individuals are is going to be really important. So if the organization doesn't have any track record, then you want to make sure that you at least have some people on board, even if they're not the key staff, that are there as advisors, that are there as supervisors, that have the experience and the background that shows some that show that you're going to get the program forward, because the funders are really going to want to see some type of experience there. If not with the organization, it's a new program, but the people offering the program have experience, and even if the experience isn't direct, as long as it's transferable. So in a similar type of program or providing similar types of services, maybe with an entirely different community or clientele, but still there's some transfer of knowledge there. Alan, you have anything
Thank
to add?
you.
The only other thing I'd add is funders are very interested these days in collaboration. And so to be able to say that you're going forward with this new program and that you have consulted with other related organizations in your area, letters of support, they support the idea. So again, the funder wants to make sure they're not reinventing the wheel. You're not doing something somebody else does, but you're filling in a needed gap. And so having an endorsement of outside agencies in your area could be very helpful.
Thank you. We have a couple comments from people that seem like they may have been around the block with grant writing. They're saying aim to submit at least 2 days before they're due. Take it home, double check it, triple check it, and make sure to submit early. So that's coming up over and over again. Is early is better. Try not to be the last one in the inbox, the day it's due. Also, we had some comments about involving other members is a really good idea to bring back to the agency. So just some things from some people that may have done this once or twice before. But another question that came up is often RFP questions seem redundant. How does one answer very similar questions without being redundant yourself?
I've had that experience as one agency that I thought was asking the same question 3 times, and I just chose to answer it 3 times. Slightly changed the wording a little bit, but clearly they were redundant, repetitive. But rather than saying, see question 2 above, which could be insulting to the agency, they must have had reasons why. There maybe different people are reviewing different parts. I didn't know, but I was generally successful with this agency, and that was my strategy, is to answer each question fully as if it was self-standing. Within the answer, try not to be repetitive and redundant. But if they're asking very similar questions, that's a great question, and I've struggled with that myself. That seemed to be the best response. Jenny, anything?
No, I think that that's true. Maybe reword it a little bit, but sometimes they do ask very similar questions. And it may be that they didn't proofread the application itself, but I think it may also be that there are multiple people reviewing, or they want to know something within the context of something else. So yeah, I would agree. Just repeat it. Don't leave it out.
Great. So I guess what I'm hearing is you're not crazy if you're seeing that. That may be that they are sort of redundant questions.
Right.
Yep.
I know I would be like, am I missing something? But another question was specific to for-profit LLCs getting funding for projects that are largely community related. Do you have any grant resources for LLCs?
Don't I think you can, I think that's a difficult, there are some, we didn't include it in this webinar. There are some good grant resources out there that you can use, and maybe that's something we can follow up with that will outline them. So often you will have to have a partner, a nonprofit partner that maybe the funds can flow through, and you are and that's where the collaboration is important, because I know a lot of the nonprofits or a lot of the foundations really do only donate to nonprofits, and some of them have to only donate to nonprofits. I don't have any offhand that I can think of, but we can look into it.
Yeah, there are some that will say they'll fund individuals, which are private individuals, and that would probably be open to an LLC. And then a lot of foundations will fund what they call a fiscal agent. It's designed for a small startup nonprofit that doesn't have fiscal management capacity. So the foundation funds a bigger agency, which then funnels the money down. I don't know if they would be open to a nonprofit being a fiscal agent for an LLC. But the other way is that you certainly could be a subcontractor to the nonprofit that manages the grant, and you could do, a bulk of the work on a contract basis. But for tax purposes, I think most foundations are required to give to 501c3, not just any nonprofit, but a 501c3 nonprofit.
I mean, maybe even the small business loans, community loan funds, grants that go to small businesses, that may be one option to look to those resources.
And Jenny, Allen, if you have any of those other grant, resources or locations for looking and soliciting for grant funding, share them with Rachel and I, and we'll put them in the YouTube comments.
I know. I feel like we put them together before, but I'm not sure. So I will.
Yeah, no, I've got them. Yeah, it was earlier program we ran.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I never
Yeah.
did it before.
So just a few people had asked about that, just to recap for everybody on the line. They were asking for other places to look for grants. They knew about Grants Gateway. They knew about things of that nature. We will look to follow up with that later. So everybody on the email will get a link in a few days to where to find this on YouTube. We will upload this information in the on the YouTube link.
But the best one that has the most comprehensive information is really the foundationcenter.org. That's for nonprofit foundations. Those aren't government grants. There is some free resources there. You're going to get better information if you have a paid subscription. So, you know, in the olden days, we used to go to every community might have a foundation center subscription, and you could go there. We're going fewer places now. So it may be worth, you know, spending the money for a month or two and doing a lot of grant research using the Foundation Center website, you know, picking up the subscription for a short time, because it is the most comprehensive information, and it allows you to do things like search by area, search by word. You can do some backward searches, so you can see, you know, I used to do a lot of searches trying to figure out who was funding agencies like me or programs like me in my broader community, and that gave me a sense of who are the foundations that I haven't heard from, because there are a lot of small ones that, unless you really dug down for the research, that can be harder to find.
Yeah, many libraries have them if they're accessible now. The New York State Library in Albany has one. And if you go to the Foundation Center and look for branches, I think they will tell you where there are places that have a subscription. I don't know if any of them will allow it to be done remotely. We just have to go to the library, get on a computer and do it there. But with COVID, anything's possible. So it may be worth checking who in your community has a subscription, and is there a way for you to access it remotely?
Any other questions on your end, Rachel?
So let me just see. Somebody is asking for the foundation link again.
Yep. Okay. So I'll type it into I think I will type it into everybody. I think
All participants you'll want to pick.
foundationcenter.org. I'm just going to double check it though. I'm going to stop my, can I do it? I'm pretty sure it's just foundationcenter.org, but I'm going to, before I send that out to the greater.
And then just while Jenny's looking at that, Alan, somebody had asked to all panelists, is there any sample that can be shared of an excellent application?
I think they were asking you guys that as for OBS, but yeah, I mean, I've written excellent proposals, I guess, but
They're so contingent on the RFA too. It's not,
yeah,
what might be good for one might not be good for another. So it's
Right.
hard to share things like that. And it also can jeopardize the procurement record. So you won't see a lot of, especially from OVS, us sharing any examples. What I will tell you is what we're looking for is directly in the RFA, and you are graded exactly on what those requirements are listed in the specific pages of those RFAs. So pay close attention.
Yeah, when I used to do full day in-person programs on grant writing, I would bring an RFA with me and have people read it and then talk about what they see, what they found, what they understand. And it's amazing the different interpretations everybody has. So as Blake said, it's all there. It's not always crystal clear. And you have to read it 3 or 4 times, and you have to really get 2 or 3 people reading it and come up to common understandings. And there are words that just are hard to define. So most public agencies like OVS, when they put out an announcement, they allow written questions, because people ask those things that, I don't know what you mean by this word, or what are you looking for? And they'll answer that. So so that's another thing, is that with government agencies in particular, they almost always have a Q&A time period. You've got to get your question in before the deadline, and it's usually not very long, like a week or 2. And so read it carefully, get your questions in, and then they'll post the answers. And so that helps quite a bit. But yeah, reading the RFA, reading between the lines, really, what are they looking for? Get the feel behind the writer. Why did they write this? What are what's important to them. They usually give you some kind of priority, but you can also, as you read it, you pick up certain words, and this is what they're really worried about. This is what they're really trying to address. This is what they think is important. So it's psyching out the writer of the RFA, and I think you can do it. I've done pretty well over the years, really coming to a pretty good understanding of what they're looking for, and then making sure I can deliver that.
So I did put another link in the chat for the Grantsmanship Center. So the Grantsmanship Center is another organization that does a lot of grant writing training. They do have templates and sample grants on their website. I know part of the website is paid, part of it isn't. I think some of the links are, I think the links to the templates are available. So it's a good place to kind of dig through a little bit if you're looking for additional information about grant writing, is the Grantsmanship Center.
I imagine if you're still on with us, you're a captive audience, and it is absolutely worth repeating this. Please submit the application 2 days before it's due. I cannot tell you how many times we've had people run up to the last minute and actually have missed the opportunity for funding because of a technical issue that wasn't their fault, but it wasn't the funder's fault either. And in that case, the comptroller's office will not allow that to be pulled into the candidate list. So you guys have to be very, very diligent in submitting beforehand if possible.
Right. And since I am not an direct employee of New York State, I will say that Grants Gateway does bog down. So if you're using the Grants Gateway for not just OVS, there are a lot of state grants that come through the Grants Gateway, big ones that have deadlines, bog down on that last day. And that was one of the reasons that we talked about earlier as well, making sure that you have a letter of intent. Some of the Grants Gateway app have things that need to pre-qualify. So since so many of you were new to grant writing, maybe we're not the people who did the OBS grant. That's just something to remember. If you're doing a state or government grant, because the grant, the online portal is for a big, it's for the full state, and all of the state agencies use it. There are a number of steps there. And so you want to start that process. You want to start that online process for those government grants almost as soon as you get them. Log in, make sure you have everything there.
Jenny, there's a question. Is candid.org the same as the foundation?
No, so I must have given you the wrong link.
I just typed in Foundation Center, went on the link, and I got candid.org.
Wow. Well, who knows? Maybe I haven't been on for a month or two. That is really interesting.
Yeah. I'm almost leery when I get to this I'm not supposed to get to.
That is, so they have Candid at a glance, Foundation Center directory online. So evidently.
Foundation Center and GuideStar are Candid. They merged.
Yeah. That's
news. Yeah, that's news to me. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Right. Oh, and which is, another, and GuideStar is another way that I've kind of backed my way into. GuideStar is where you have access to all of the 990s, so the tax forms for all the nonprofits, and sometimes you can see who's funded nonprofits that way by pulling up their 990s. So yeah, so it is the same thing. They've renamed themselves, but it is the foundation directory is now part of Candid. So GuideStar and Foundation Center. But both provide a lot of resources for you if you're looking for funding, and if you're looking for information about nonprofits that you're partnering with.
And our email addresses are up there. Feel free to take them down if you have any subsequent questions.
Right.
Feel free to contact us if there's anything we can do in your organization related to leadership, team building, communication, performance evaluation, financial management, consulting, lots of areas that we can provide assistance with. So feel free to contact us. As Blake mentioned, it's no charge to your agency. And we only have this for less than a year remaining in our project. So important that you get your requests in early, because same with this, at last time, everybody requested everything at the end and we just couldn't provide all the services that were asked for. So
we ran out of days.
Yep.
Just as a guide, from the time of submission proposal through project starting can be roughly 4 to 6 weeks, but sometimes it can be longer. So don't think if you submit something today, you'll have something tomorrow. So just be aware there are some approval processes. It is better, again, like submitting a grant, doing it a bit early, and making sure you snag their time. There's also no limit to how many times you can request training or technical assistance. So please feel free to take a look at there's a whole catalog of services, but there's also a create your own. If there's two things that seem interesting or helpful, you can submit 2 different proposals. We don't say just one. So every proposal is reviewed and considered.
Thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of free training available to programs.
Free.
And
the
if you
pr-
don't
the
know what you
proposals-
want, you can just email us, one of us, and
Yeah.
we'd be happy to talk. You know, one of the things that Alan and I both do is just talk to program directors or executive directors who are program managers and you know what are the issues that you're facing? What are things that might be helpful? It might be a training, but it might just be a little consulting. It may be some one-on-one coaching. We're happy to talk through what the issue is. So even if you know you want to take advantage of free training because it's free, but you don't know exactly what it is you want to do, we're happy to talk that through with you.
And the other thing is you don't need to know anything that we talked about today to submit the proposal. It's really
That's
simple.
right.
No page numbers,
That's a survey monkey.
letters of testimonial.
Yeah, none of
You're
that.
basically pre-approved as a
That's right.
applicant because you're OBS funded. And all you have to do is, ask for something that makes sense within our domain and you'll get there. So it's a very quick proposal. It's not one that you need a team to complete. So.
So it's about 2:20 now. So if you do have additional questions, feel free to email us. Make sure you fill out the evaluation when it pops up. We didn't get as many last time, so we'd love to get a little bit more feedback. It helps us know where we're going for the next one. And I think that's it.
Yeah. Well,
Okay,
thank you.
Someone just said they had difficulty with some of the links in the chat. You can copy the chat and paste it into a Word document to have it. If you can't, click on it in the chat. So feel free to copy and paste anything from the end of the chat into a Word document on your computer, and then you'll have it. We'll be closing down very shortly. We'll give you another minute or two if you need to do that. Make some copies of the chat box.
And like we said too earlier, a lot of the links will be added to the YouTube video for this recording.
Yes. So if you are listed as being on this, we have your email. That's where that thank you for joining. This serves as your participation certificate, and the link is found here. So you'll get that within probably 2 days or so. I have no more questions coming through on either of my views. So I think with that, we are happy to close out this webinar.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Happy
you.
holidays.